like to recognize Mr. Stuckey for a miscellaneous report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to take a little bit of time to speak to the board tonight on an important matter and report to you directly about an issue we've been working on very diligently over the last close to 60 days. In the middle of January, on a Friday afternoon, Mayor Moore and myself and the City Attorney, Shauna Billingsley, received a call from the Harpeth River Watershed Association and the Southern Environmental Law Center, telling us that we could expect a letter the following Monday and informing us that they would be putting us on notice regarding a potential citizen suit regarding our operations of our wastewater plant and our sanitary sewer collection system. We were taken aback. We had been a partner with Harpeth River Watershed Association in many ways over many years and in many projects. But we took the claims and the concerns very seriously and have dug in over the last several weeks to review line by line, item by item, the issues in that claim and in that letter. What I want to give to you tonight is an executive summary, if you will, of what we found and where we are in reviewing those matters. And so I hope you'll indulge me here for the next probably 10 to 15 minutes. First of all, I want to touch on the fact that the City of Franklin has a strong track record as a good steward of the river and of our resources. Just highlight a few things on here that we talk about. The Integrated Water Resource Plan that the city embarked on a couple years ago was the first of its kind in the state of Tennessee and one of the first in the entire southeastern section of the United States. It involved extensive input from stakeholders, including TDEC, multiple components of TDEC, the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, that is, and the Harpeth River Watershed Association. What the IWRP, as it was called, took a long-term holistic view of what we do related to water, whether it's drinking water, the treatment of wastewater, the stormwater system, our distribution of reclaimed water throughout the community, and all with that working through how it impacts the river, how it impacts the Harpeth River with extensive modeling to help support that. The city worked in partnership with the Harpeth River Watershed Association and other stakeholders to fulfill an element that was included in our existing water withdrawal permit, which would provided for the potential, if practical, to remove the Lowhead Dam from the Harpeth River. We did that, and the city put real money, real resources directly into making that happen and completing that project. The city has taken on other projects that have lasting environmental impact. Things like the restoration of the stream path on the eastern flank battlefield to its historic alignment. The extension of sanitary sewer services to over 600 homes with aging, failing septic systems, many of which are right on the doorstep of the Harpeth River. The repair of our raw water reservoir, 116 million gallon raw water reservoir. Our own city staff, our water director, Mark Hilty, was the person who discovered the emission from Egyptian lacquer into the Harpeth River and reported it to authorities. All right, now turning to the allegations and what we've been working from, I will group them into three broad categories and give you a brief overview of each and where we stand and what our assessment is of those allegations, being sanitary sewer overflows, discharge claims, and finally reporting violations, alleged reporting violations. First of all, sanitary sewer overflows. In their letter, they claimed 54 sanitary sewer overflows in a 5-year period. As we reviewed those, we determined that seven of them were essentially related to plumbing on identified property, not really a part of our collection system. So those really don't affect what happens in our responsibility, which is to run a collection system and a treatment operation. And none of those, in any case, reached any river or receiving water of any form. There are 14 claims of overflows that relate to the 2010 flood, the May 2010 flood, a 1,000-year storm event. And with that claim, they had 43 days of violation in summary. From input that we've received from EPA and from just common sense, a 1,000-year storm event, it cannot be practically expected to design a sewer system to absorb such an event. And EPA looks at it that way too. It's purely an act of God. It is also a federally and state declared disaster that we absorbed as a community. And having lived it, as all of us did, everything was overflowing in those days of May, as we all know. And then finally, there are 14 of these alleged overflows that never reached water. And when you look at the pure definition of discharge, for it to be truly in that category, it must reach a receiving water, and in these cases it did not. So that leaves us with a net number of 19 over a 5-year period in a sewer system that includes 375 miles. So this next chart just sort of summarizes those 19. 11 were in dry weather conditions, and you see there's a variety of reasons there. Blockage in the system that occurs from things that may have been put in the system that don't belong there. Fat, oil, and grease that may have been released, again, inappropriately within the system. An illicit discharge, an infrastructure failure. Roots sometimes enter a system, especially elements of our system that are older. Then wet weather issues. 4 of those relate to, ironically, a sewer upgrade project which had some bypass pumps in place. And a large rain event caused those pumps to fail and caused a short-term overflow condition. But that project is now at its completion point and is not likely to ever occur again because we've made those upgrades. And the final grouping looks at excess rainfall. Again, 19 out of 5 years on a system of 375 miles. So the question I ask and our staff dug into is, what does that mean? How does that look compared to other systems across the country, other data points? There's not one hard and fast rule. So we had to pull in different elements, one being direct feedback we got from EPA staff in Region 4, which is the southeastern section of the country. That includes us. Their statement was, based on a measurement of overflows per 100 miles per year, 5 to 6 is a well-functioning system. Franklin's number, 1.0. Historical data from 2005, same region, Region 4. 11 sanitary sewer overflows per 100 miles per year was the average. The median was 8.5 in our region, and that's the historical data we've been able to find. More recent information, obviously not where we live, but California EPA reported for an infrastructure area of over 80,000 miles of sewer infrastructure, a performance level of just under 4 overflows per 100 miles per year. So you look at Franklin's performance compared to those benchmarks. We are somewhere between 75 to 90% better than those performance benchmarks. Truly an indication of a high-performing system, both in terms of collections, and then we'll get on to some of what we do in treatment. Let me go back real quick. That far column talks about average response time. You look at our response time to any of those overflows, on average in total, 25-minute response time. On the high end, 35 minutes. On the low end, 15 minutes. That, again, there's not hard and fast rules out there, but that is a strong performance from the data point in comparisons that we've been able to pull together. Now turning to some of the emissions questions or discharge questions that were raised. One of the categories related to ammonia. Look at the chart on the left. That gives you a summary of our performance versus our permit levels. In the summer months, we have an overall 5-year performance of just under 12% of our permit level. Now, when permit levels are set, let me just say, they are deemed to be protective of human health and of the environment. So that's what they set your permit at a level that is reflective of being protective of human health and the environment. Our performance in this ammonia category, when we blend summer and winter performance together, again, just under 12% in the summer and about 2.5% in the winter, you annualize that to 4.7%, under 5% compared to that permit limit in that 5-year period. There are 3 individualized cases that were highlighted in their claim that are essentially a few days when grease, inappropriate emissions were put in our system. Not by us, but we took it and had to treat it. And the way the process works is we've got to it takes the biological process and treatment process multiple days to work through that kind of emission that comes into the system. And so there are 3 of those identified. They were treated and brought back into compliance within a matter of a few days, but they did happen, but they represent single operational disruptions, not a systematic problem of any kind. And then the final element on this slide that deals with ammonia, and there's a like situation in another category. We provided a report in 1 week in October, a report we provide weekly, related to this standard and discharge. And we happen to report it at 0.63 versus the permitted level of 0.6. The guidance we've received from TDEC on this matter and others like it is that you submit the number based on what's in the permit, to the number of digits that's in the permit. So in this case, what we should submit is 0.6 and use conventional rounding. So using that guidance and reviewing this data, we have resubmitted this and do not believe this constitutes a violation. Okay, looking at the E. coli standard, there are 2 operational events here that we have highlighted and have shared back in reviewing this. One is a single day event where a power surge took place at the treatment plant, knocking out briefly our UV treatment regimen. That was not, it took less than an hour, but took some time for that to come back online, and that did cause a one-time, one-day exceedance in that standard. This equipment has since been upgraded, and we reasonably expect this not to happen again, but have worked to address it. There was a second case when a fire broke out on one evening in 2012 and knocked out one of our 4 banks of UV treatment. This did cause, again, a brief period of exceedance. What we did in response to that while the UV unit was being repaired is we did provide some additional chlorine treatment to help deal with the E. coli existence. We did help address that, but we did have a slight variance and exceedance in the chlorine area because we used that. This was repaired within a matter of a couple days, brought back online. The chlorine use was ceased, but we did do some additional study on our own, not required to do this, but went ahead and did some additional readings within the river, both upstream and downstream from our outfall, to look at the river and the impact on the river. And at every sampling point, the river was in compliance with what the TDEC permit, the discharge permit requires. So the river was in compliance, if you will, as a whole. The next element is something called CBOD, which is carbonaceous oxidation, and is a measurement of the treatment capacity and waste capacity in your treatment cycle. Looking again at the data on the left-hand side, this is our 5-year performance. In the summer, 13% of our permit level. In the winter, 7.5% of our permit level. Annualize that, 9% of our permit level. One thing really important to highlight for you right below that chart is an overall performance measure. The total removal performance. Our worst month in this 5-year period was a removal level of 98.6%. That is versus a permit standard of 85%. So our worst month was far and above what that permit level was from a removal standpoint. I look at it, looking at my kids' grades in school, 100% is perfection. If my kid come home with a grade on a test at 98.6, we're giving a high five, right? So that is strong performance. And we have a similar performance in the suspended solids area, which is right at the same level, 98, 99% consistent performance month in, month out. In this category, they did highlight a single exceedance event, and again, it's a rounding issue. 12 is the permit limit. And this is 4.5 years ago. 12 is the permit limit. We reported 12.16. The guidance is use the digits and the level that's in your permit. We do that. We use conventional rounding. We've upgraded this report and turned it into TDEC. And again, no violation. There was another allegation related to our testing and reporting. that deals with a single week in December of 2011 when we had a malfunction in our incubator. It caused the sample to be invalid. Nothing we can do about it. That was gone, but we can report that the performance the week before and the week after well within permit limits. The next area, there was an allegation, again, of a single group of violations related to selenium and cyanide content. These were again, non-violations in our opinion, as we've reviewed this. There was essentially a report from the lab that we use, a lab that we have since replaced, reported it as a non-detect level, and reported it, I won't get into great detail, but reported it at a certain level as a non-detect, but it's turned out that citing that level was actually above the permit level. We have since dug into the specific information and determined that it actually was below the permitted level. We have specific documentation that shows it. We've now updated our reporting to Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation to show that we were in compliance in those two areas in that single reporting period. Again, no violation. Finally, there's this group of reporting violations that were cited by Harpeth River Watershed Association and the Southern Environmental Law Center. These essentially amount to what form we use to report various data. We have faithfully reported information related to the permit. There is a template provided for in what's called the DMR, which is the discharge monitoring report. And there's also the MOR, which is the monthly operating report. The DMR is a template. It's given to us by TDEC. The permit says, thou shalt use this form. There happens to be some categories that don't appear on that form. So what the city did is reported it on the MOR report, which provided us the ability to add content. So we did that week in, week out, month in, month out as we reported this information. All that information was provided, and we went the extra mile, not just providing it to the field office, but also providing it to the central office as well, so that all folks involved got to see all the information. We have since worked with TDEC to modify that form to specifically provide for that reporting and certain calculations so there can be no confusion by anybody that looks at the record. But that, again, has been addressed and modified. There are a few minor clerical errors that have been identified, and we appreciate those being brought to our attention. But I will say, that and I have to cite this, things happen. And we have worked to correct those and submit amended reports wherever we're aware of it. We did have a personal element happen in all this. We had a tragedy strike our team in February of 2011. Vic Bates, who'd been the longtime superintendent of the wastewater treatment plant, passed away suddenly over a weekend. And so we lost a lot of expertise and knowledge instantaneously. Our assistant superintendent had to step up. He did a great job in doing that, but a couple things did get missed along the way. I give TDEC a lot of credit. They came and helped sit down with us and work with us and help get this individual up to speed as best we could. There are one or two areas where we missed a reporting transition from winter standards into summer standards. But again, those have been corrected, updated as best we could, looking back, and again, that is literally a handful of items that hit us in that very difficult transition. And again, we continue to strive to improve that process. This last slide, I apologize, there are a number of things on here, but this is a couple kind of miscellaneous items that were cited that we want to respond to. One of the claims that we heard was that we needed to align our monitoring and do same-day monitoring related to influent and effluent. That shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how our treatment process works. There is a detention cycle in that treatment process. So having a day between those measurements is exactly what you should do. And we just cite that because it was a point made in the discussion, and we wanted to make sure that it was clear that that actually aligns with how the treatment process works in reality. It's not a permit issue. It's not included in our permit, but it was something that was cited that we wanted to make sure we were clear on. There is one element in the existing permit that required a nutrient management plan, which is somewhat unusual. It's not covered in EPA regulations. It is only covered in TDEC regulations as it relates to livestock operations. There's not firm guidance as it relates to a municipal system like ours. But in response to that, we submitted the Integrated Water Resource Plan that we think addresses a lot of nutrient treatment issues and the enhancements that the city is on the path to doing over time. We have not gotten specific feedback on that. There have been discussions, but there have not been specific guidance given to us at this point. So that is still a work in progress, and we continue to stand ready to work with TDEC to resolve those issues. There's also a bypass that was cited or claimed in this process. There happens to be one of 3 oxidation ditches that we pulled offline that we don't use because the treatment process can handle the volume. It saves us energy costs. The process can handle it both from a volume standpoint and a treatment capacity standpoint, and we stand by that. And in fact, EPA and TDEC gave us a leadership recognition, outstanding leadership recognition for our participation in an energy efficiency partnership. One of the elements of that energy efficiency was keeping that oxidation ditch offline because it was unnecessary. Now, as volumes increase over time, it may become necessary to bring that into the treatment train, but it's not necessary now. There was also allegations related to not having in-stream monitoring in place. The city has proposed a specific 365-day, 24-hour monitoring scheme that involves not just volumes, but water quality measures that we think is the right way to go. The original permit targeted specific problematic areas, times of the year. We think we ought to be doing it throughout the year, and we continue to wait for specific feedback and guidance on that issue. So we don't think it's over, but we haven't avoided it. We've submitted specific responses for it. There were some other areas that were highlighted in terms of how we deal with our inflow monitoring. That's specifically been identified as an improvement that will be addressed when we upgrade the wastewater treatment plant, and that is a project that is under design right now today. The bioassessment that we do on a regular basis of the river shows that it is in and around the water reclamation facility is supportive of aquatic life, and we continue to monitor that closely as well. So I'm going to summarize and conclude. We did a detailed review. Our conclusion is that we operate a highly effective and high-performing system, both in terms of the treatment plant itself and the collection system. The issue of overflows was cited, and while we strive for that number to be 0, we have a performance level at 1 per 100 miles per year that is 75 to 90% better than the national benchmarks we've been able to uncover, with an average response time of 25 minutes. The discharge allegations essentially amount to an isolated group of single operational disruptions that last anywhere from an hour to a couple days as the process works through it. And again, we do extra measures to report them, to rectify them, and make sure the system's working as best it can. And the reporting violations are, quite frankly, over-exaggerated, really have only a few clerical errors over a 5-year period, and the city has already taken actions to submit corrective forms where we can. Here's a really good quote that I think summarizes all the detail I gave you, and thanks for hanging in there for about 15 minutes to let me do that. It says, "The city of Franklin plant is treating its effluent at a very high standard and currently discharges effluent discharge significantly below its permit requirements." Great summary. The numbers absolutely back that up, everything I just showed you. I couldn't have written it better myself. I didn't have to. The Harpeth River Watershed Association did in February of 2013 in a communication to the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. So we agree with them in that statement. And we think that the facts that we've presented to you tonight and that we're going to share to our public starting tomorrow morning will help put that in context. And that's been our attempt to work through this. I want to give some recognition to Water Management for what they've done. Mark dug in and his team dug in. We've had the extra benefit of our new assistant director, Michelle Hatcher, who came in on board as an outside person probably 3 or 4 months ago. And Michelle got this assignment right away, and she really brought a good perspective because she was an outsider and could question how we looked at things and how we thought about them. And so this discussion continues. I gave this same presentation to TDEC officials today and to Harpeth River Watershed and Southern Environmental Law Center folks this afternoon. We stand ready to work with folks as partners, and we hope that that will be the approach that's taken going forward. We know we're not perfect, but we're pretty darn good. And we are a high-performing system, and we're going to continue to be so, and we're going to build on that track record. So I thank you for your time and patience in letting us have about 50-some days to work through this in great detail and provide a detailed response. We will be communicating a more formal letter by the end of the week to respond to that those specific allegations that were included in their letter of January, and we'll move from there. So I thank you for your indulgence tonight, and if there's any questions I can answer, I'd be glad to do so. I do have this presentation available to you. I'll pass that on. So, thank you.